Hey everyone, so today I'm going to talk about the villains of Total Drama and how I rank them. I'm basing this ranking obviously by their effectiveness as a villain, but also their entertainment factor and how much I think they're entertaining, obviously, and how much I enjoyed watching them. So it's kind of an amalgamation of both sanctions. I'm only including the main villain, or the ones that I consider to be the main villains. So people like Joe and Lightning aren't going to be on this list. So at dead last at 8 is Justin. While he was entertaining, it wasn't because he was a villain, it was because everyone was laughing at him. And really, he wasn't really that villainous. I was actually kind of disappointed when I rewatched the entire franchise earlier this year to see that he really didn't do much. The only thing he did was force Gwen to throw the challenge, but that is more so out of preservation than anything really villainous. He saw an opportunity and took it. And while he was kind of petty with Izzy, especially during the second elimination, that wasn't really villainous. And even him taking advantage of Beth and Lindsay essentially led to nowhere, and he kind of had a codependent relationship with them, especially Beth, as the series went on. Overall, Justin wasn't very effective at all. And it was clear that the writers realized that he wasn't someone that could be an effective villain. So at seventh is Sugar, and honestly, I barely even consider her to be a villain. But just because there's no one else in Pocket 2 Island, Scarlett was only one for her final episode, and it was kind of pathetic, and I don't count Amy. What I will say about Sugar is that she's always willing to stir the pot, as we see this with Dave and Sky throughout the mid portion of the season, how she undercuts Sky at the end and tries to split apart Jasmine and Sean at the very end. But obviously, her main active villainy is getting eliminated, though that was very uncomfortable to watch and wasn't very entertaining. I also just found her to be very gross, to the point where she was only but even less likable and even more gross, hence her being this low on the list. And it's easy for you to not to consider her as a villain, since many don't. At sixth is Courtney. Clearly, she was added in because the writers felt like Justin wasn't serving it up as a villain, and Courtney, it's weird, she did become a lot more aggressive, but she wasn't really a villain in the sense that she's manipulating people, she's going after people. She just mainly acted like a brat throughout the second portion of TDA, as she relied a lot on lawsuits and her lawyers to get her through things, especially during the first half of her run in action. She obviously won a bunch of immunities, which was kind of, how do I say it, convenient, since it didn't really seem like she could manipulate anyone. Of course, there was still Shauna Boot, but that wasn't really that impressive. And honestly, she was a lot more annoying compared to entertaining. And once she started losing challenges again, she was essentially eliminated pretty quickly. Either way, she was more effective than the other two, but wasn't that great either. So at 5 is Mel, and he's only this high because the others are completely incompetent compared to the others on this list. Mal did break a bunch of stuff throughout the season, and it did cause psychological warfare on some of the contestants, with Sierra being a major example. Of course, he did end up outwitting and outplaying Alejandro, but it became uncomfortable to watch. But it's weird because he was hyped up as being the most villainous of them all, but he didn't really have much of a plan, and he kind of became underwhelming. It also doesn't help that he was a multiple personality of Mike, and this was how they decided to carry on the disorder. And his downfall was just not interesting at all. Overall, I just found him to be very boring as well, so I didn't even get much enjoyment out of him, which shouldn't be the case with a villain. So he's just here, and I found him to be underwhelming overall, though he's a bit more effective than some of the others. So at number 4 is Scott. I like that they gave him a different strategy to use compared to the other villains, and he decided to throw a lot of challenges instead. The thing is, for him to pull it off, it involves a lot of contrivances. So while it is effective, it's kind of almost not easy to believe in a sense. Unlike some of the others, Scott never outright manipulates or tries to befriend others, with the exception of Zoe, which doesn't really lead anywhere in general, if you really think about it. And of course, he had the moves of tricking everyone into believing that Don stole stuff and using Mike's disorder against him. So while he did have some interesting moves here and there, I do feel he kind of flatlined towards his last few episodes. So in third, I have Heather. I've already discussed in prior videos and analyses about how she's kind of overrated strategically. So in that regard, she definitely isn't one of the better villains. But she's up so high because she's just so darn entertaining. She gives no F's about who she pisses off. She turns on Beth and Lindsay whenever she finds them no longer convenient. She has great conflicts with people like Gwen and Lashana. And she does have some moves here and there. Though ultimately, if it weren't for the producers in show, she wouldn't have lasted nearly as long. Overall, she set the standard for a very good reason, and she's at one of the top for a very good reason. Overall, I just find the other two a bit more impressive. At number 2 are the Ice Dancers. One, the dynamic between Jacques and Jose is somewhat brilliant, and it gives them an extra oomph compared to the other villains, since obviously they are two characters with different personalities but handles things the same way and they can bounce off of one another. They decide to cheat, lie, and since it's a physical game, they have to use their strategies differently than the other ones, since you can't vote anyone off here. At the same time, they do border on god playing, and they also use a lot of conveniences and contrivances as well, which is why it's kind of hard for me to put them too high. But they're just so darn entertaining, and they're just so aggressive with everything they do, and they really are arguably the most shameless. In general, I think they are the most entertaining, but I don't think they are the most effective based off of their own skills. So at number 1 is Alejandro. He's up this high because he has the strategy and the entertainment down pat. Of course, he chose the weaker team and decided to use their emotions and vulnerabilities in order to throw them off the game and to get them eliminated. Of course, you see this with Harold, Bridget, Lashana, and eventually DJ. He is so skilled in many different areas, and obviously he was a response of Justin not being a very good villain. But at the same time, he's definitely a god player at several points throughout the season, and it almost makes it not entertaining. Emphasis on almost. Alejandro has the personality, he has the charm, he has the wit, he has the strategy, he has the physical strength. I don't like some of the conveniences that he had in his advantage, like in the London episode and in Drumheller. But overall, Alejandro was a blast to watch. So overall, that's my list on the villains. There isn't really that much to discuss now that I think about it, and they're all different in their own ways. Thank you all for watching.